I'm really excited about Australia and its economic prospects for the future. It's a very diverse country, and there's a lot of change that's coming via education in regard to gender and marriage equality and improving the lives of Native Australians.
This is Property Investory, where we talk to successful property investors to find out more about their stories, mindset and strategies. I'm Taran Shum, and in this episode, we'll continue the conversation with Ben Weeding, who is a buyer's agent at BuySide. We'll find out the strategy he used to achieve this and how setting his sights high propelled him on the road to financial freedom. Also, before we delve into this episode, go over to propertyinvestory.com and subscribe to receive your free property investor case studies, where you'll learn how to generate passive income from your properties. Go there now to sign up for free. There wasn't much holding Weeding back from investing in property. However, he describes himself as a risk-averse investor.
I was introduced to the benefits of owning a property early from my parents, as I mentioned. It was just a matter of saving up enough money to get a deposit before I purchased. I didn't think it would be I would necessarily be investing in property, but rather just buying my own home and paying it off as quickly as possible, similar to my parents. In hindsight, this isn't always the best strategy. But I don't really regret heading down that path initially. As I mentioned, I'm quite a risk-averse investor. I do have a very low LVR or debt-to-equity ratio compared to a lot of other people in my current portfolio.
For Weeding, making that change from an equities investor to a property investor was all about self-belief.
I think probably what I mentioned before about believing in myself. I think that's probably what's changed. Certainly, as an equities trader, working other people's orders, doing the trading. I felt that I was good enough to do that, but for me, in the end, it ended up being just a job. But now I've really honed my skill set, which is that macroeconomic analysis and overlay with equity markets and financial markets into property markets, and that following belief in myself. I really know when I'm out there and I'm talking to people about property and helping them and educating them that I'm sending a message and a different message to what you are hearing in the media.
In terms of the macro perspective, Weeding is a big believer in the Sydney market and has been for quite some time.
I've been a big believer in the Sydney market for quite some time, and obviously all my properties are actually based in Sydney. Sydney is Sydney for what it is, and my feeling is that I guess when I left my role as an equities trader in 2014, I was based in Singapore at the time. My wife's actually Japanese, and my company was moving us back home, and they gave us the opportunity to move either back to Japan or Australia. And the result ended up being Australia purely from the perspective of my belief was that the economic standing of this country was far superior to a lot of other countries that I had been seeing out there. Sydney in particular was the big driver of that economy and still is at the moment. It's about a third of the Australian economy is driven by the New South Wales economy, and Sydney as a whole, there's a lot of work, a lot of infrastructure, there's a lot of jobs being created in this city as opposed to any other city in Australia. And so I guess that's been my mantra. Certainly at different times, though, Sydney's becoming a little bit more mature in this part of the cycle, though, and you are going to see other capital cities start to move at greater rates of acceleration. But it's whether or not that they are more risky still than investing in Sydney at the moment. So risk has been a predominant factor in my investment thesis.
Weeding's strategy when investing in a property is to look at the rentability factor. He also believes that overcoming fear when initially investing in a property is crucial.
People generally are fearful of investing in property because of the leverage and the debt, and this is normal, completely understandable. People wonder how on earth I'm going to actually pay this debt off, but the reality is, as the experienced investor knows, you need that leverage. And so, for me, I've historically been a capital growth investor. I believe in quality over quantity, as I mentioned, and I think the secret, therefore, is building your capital base as high as possible, but you're trying to keep your holding costs at a minimum. So I mentioned the property that I had in Balmain that I bought in 2005. I still own that property and I have renovated it. So in an attempt to add value, which has happened. In 2009, I bought an apartment in Mossman as well. At the time, wasn't that expensive. I think it was about $735,000. Certainly not expensive in today's money. And the third property I bought in 2012 was a house in Northbridge, which is in a lower North Shore suburb of Sydney. It was a house, it was an apartment. It was on a very large, reasonably large block of land. And, over the course of the last 3 or 4 years, I guess, since that cycle has moved, they've obviously done very well on the back of that. When I looked at those properties, I guess, I will say that when I did purchase the last 2 properties, I was overseas, and I did use a buyer's agent to purchase both those properties. And I was in the country for both of them at the time, and it was just a matter of going around and looking at. I liked those areas. I went around and looked at several properties before I made the selection, but there were different attributes for those properties. But it was really about the rentability factor. Would a tenant want to rent these properties? Was one of the main driving forces, because that's really one of the big key things if you when you are investing, because that's what's going to keep your holding costs down.
The value of Weeding's properties increased over the years. He now owns a substantial property portfolio.
The Balmain property was about $700,000 as well. the Mossman property was $735,000, if I remember correctly, and the Northbridge house, I think, was touching on 1.8 mil. So the 3 of them together now combined are probably in the vicinity of that $6 million mark.
Wow. Okay. And roughly, when you're talking about holding costs, how much would something like that be costing you at this point in time to hold these properties?
I'm still negatively geared on the 3 of them. And I am living in one of them at the moment. But I think I'd say probably altogether they're running at maybe a $10,000 cost for me for the year. If the market is going up sort of 5% a year on a $6 million capital base, that's $300,000 a year. And if it's costing me 10, then I'm happy with that.
Coming up after the break, Weeding talks about his use of a buyer's agent and how that worked for him.
People definitely get the value for different reasons, whether it's saving it off the price of the purchase of the property, whether it's because they're not in the country, whether it's time, whether it's getting them into the market so that they actually get a higher, you're getting into the market now rather than waiting 6 months' time and you're missing out on that capital growth in the meantime. There are different reasons, and certainly I found that the cost was worth it when I used a buyer's agent.
He also divulges on what the key influences were that led him on his property investing journey.
It set my mindset on the right course to kind of work out how I could get wealthy by getting my money to work for me.
And that's next. I'm Tyrone Shump, and you're listening to Property Investory. Hey podcast listeners, if you're finding this podcast super informative, then guess what? I'm giving you an exclusive free case study from property investors like this one just for listening. These case studies are from experienced property investors where they share specific strategies and numbers of their portfolio. Simply text me your email address to 04 99 88 10 40 to get your free case studies. Now back to the show. The use of a buyer's agent aided Weeding as he was able to continue his property journey whilst living overseas.
At the time, I certainly wasn't as well versed in the property market as I am now, and I wasn't in the location. I was proximity restricted, of course, being overseas. I felt like I needed someone on the ground to do this for me, and I was happy to pay that fee for them to do it for me. Both experiences were fantastic, and I've found, doing that role myself now, which is obviously one of the reasons why I'm doing this role now, is that I enjoyed it. I just thought it was a fantastic service, and I think, people in, particularly living in Sydney, because the price have done so well, and they, you could buy any old property in the last 3 or 4 years, and it's probably done well in value, but now, if the market does start peaking, or if there is some sort of downturn for whatever reason, the property that's front facing onto the Princess Highway, or in one of the big apartment blocks around Walleye Creek, potentially it's you're not going to be. You're going to run into either vacancy rates or, if some people have to get out for whatever reason and sell their property, there could be a lot more stock on the market, which is going to be a concern, and when you're trying, it'll be financially devastating if you do have to sell your property.
He believes that a buyer's agent can be very helpful, as they can come in and have the insider knowledge to find the right deals.
And I think probably one of the other advantages too, one of the properties that I did buy was off market. And so I certainly wouldn't have been able to access that property without them being there.
For Weeding, the advantage of a buyer's agent outweighs the short-term fee involved.
People definitely get the value for different reasons, whether it's saving it off the price of the purchase of the property, whether it's because they're not in the country, whether it's time, whether it's getting them into the market so that they actually get a higher you're getting into the market now rather than waiting 6 months' time, and you're missing out on that capital growth in the meantime. Different reasons, and certainly I found that the cost was worth it when I used a buyer's agent.
The best book recommendation he ever received was from a former colleague. Weeding explains why he's excited about the Australian economy from a macro perspective and what that means for future investors.
The person that really started steering me in the right direction was actually one of my former colleagues, actually, at the bank I was working at. It was a guy by the name of Richard Waddington. He's a mortgage broker now at Mortgage Hub, actually. And back in sort of 98, 99, he actually advised me to read Jan Summers' How to Build Wealth Through Investment Property. And that really resonated with me, that book. It set my mindset on the right course to kind of work out how I could get wealthy by getting my money to work for me.
That's great. And a lot of people who I've spoken to and interviewed in the past on this podcast have also recommended very, very highly Jan Summers' books as well. And I've had Jan on the podcast as well, and she's phenomenal. It's amazing.
It's a bit like the Old Testament of the Bible, I'd say. Not that it's outdated now, but it's certainly the Bible when it comes to investing in property, I think.
The best advice he has received was to gain as much knowledge as possible, to get in the right frame of mind and understand the basics of investments before making the leap.
I think, funnily enough, was spend a lot of money on my wedding so my wife would be happy. And that worked quite well. Look, apart from that, I think, what I just alluded to from the gentleman that helped steer me in the right direction was to read. I think that's probably the best advice. Gain as much knowledge as you can because you really have to get in the right frame of mind and understand the basics around any type of investment, any investment, before you start going gung-ho into anything.
Other books recommended by Weedy include the following.
I'd recommend for one of there's a gentleman by the name of Michael Yardney who has a couple of great books out. I'd either read The Rules of Property or How to Build a Multi-Million-Dollar Portfolio in Your Spare Time. I'd read a book written by a guy called Pete Wargent. It's called Get a Financial Grip. I think he's got another new book out now at the moment too, as well. And also, of course, our director at BuySide, Josh Masters, has a book out called Why Property, Why Now, which is a very succinct, concise and easy to read introduction to investment property. It's a good Sunday afternoon read for anyone who's interested in the property market.
The personal habit that Weeding does day to day is to continue having the right mindset and by ignoring the media spins in the process.
I just think my mindset is very important, and I believe with the right mindset you can do anything. One of the key things that contribute to the right type of mindset on the property front, though, is not focusing on the media too much. The media really just wants a story, and they'll take a spin on anything to obviously get readers to click on their page. A lot of information will lead you to think one thing, but it's actually the polar opposite of what is happening. So not too much focus. So too much focus on the media is a bad thing for property investors. So try and filter through all the rubbish if you can.
Weeding would advise his younger self to buy as much property as he can afford and to stick to his goals.
Make sure you buy as much property as you can afford. To keep me in the right frame of mind, have the right mindset, I would have just be telling myself to stay the course and stick to the plan, and you will actually get there in the end. And I think that's going to be really good advice to a lot of your listeners.
Lastly, he is most excited about Australia's economic prospects. He believes there are many opportunities waiting for investors.
I'm really excited about Australia and its economic prospects for the future. It's a very diverse country, and there's a lot of change that's coming via education in regard to gender and marriage equality and improving the lives of Native Australians. And I'm a big believer in improving these aspects of any society, because the economics of that society generally flourish when that's the case.
Weeding likes to look at investing from a macroeconomic perspective.
I am very macro. I like looking at very much top-down approach to things. And, there's evidence around the world, particularly from a gender equality standpoint, when the economic standing and the standing of women in a society, when that happens, the economics of a society improve, the standard of living improves. Sydney can possibly be a good example in respect to where there's a lot of two-income households in this city now, where previous 20, 30 years ago, that may not necessarily have been the case. And when that's happened, you start to see households have greater incomes, greater disposable incomes. And on the back of that, housing prices have gone up. Other prices of other things go up as well. But clearly, people are they're much better off when that happens. And there's a better feeling amongst people within society. People feel more empowered, and it's just a better thing as a whole, I think.
Weeding believes that the Australian economy has changed due to more women entering the workforce.
It's probably a combination of things. There's certainly more opportunities for employment for women. I think the nature of a family to get ahead for their children as well, keeping up with the Joneses mentality has partly been the case for that. But, Australia in the last 10, 15, 20 years too has become a wealthier nation. And there's been more job opportunities out there for those people, or for everybody. And so, as part of potentially keeping wage costs lower, as well. Women have been brought out to the workforce.
If you wish to connect with Ben Weeding, learn more about his strategy, or find out more about his mortgage services, you can reach out to him via...
Look, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm also on Facebook. And I'm also on Property Chat as well, www.propertychat.com. And I'm happy to answer any queries anyone may have to help them along their journey.
Thank you to Ben Weeding, our guest on this episode of Property Investory. If you want to hear more about his journey, then visit our website at propertyinvestory.com. Simply type in the search bar Ben Weeding and select that episode to learn more about his story. Also, if you haven't subscribed to receive your free property case studies that I only send out exclusively via email, then head over to propertyinvestory.com and subscribe. These real case studies are from experienced property investors where they share specific numbers of their portfolio, the strategies, and much more. Simply visit propertyinvestory.com to receive your free case studies. Thanks for listening.